So today we're going to be looking at version control with Git. So I'm just going to have a small presentation here. So basically, I'm Denise. I'm the one who's going to be presenting your workshop today. And we have Jacob, which you can't see. He is online. So maybe you can raise your hand up in Zoom. So if you have any questions, you can just message Jacob, or you can also just put your questions in the chat. So we want to make this workshop that everybody can enjoy and learn. So please be nice to each other. We've never had really an issue, but if anyone is being disrespectful, we just need to remove you from our session. And please do ask questions. So if you want to ask questions, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you in Zoom. You can also put your questions as a message, or if you prefer, you can send any anonymous question using this link in here, and it will take you to a Google-like document, which I'm going to show you now. So it will take you to this website, and then you can just include your question in there. Just write it, and then this won't be shown in the screen, but Jacob will be monitoring that one. So if you don't feel like you want to ask any questions, just send them through there. So now, version control. Like, why do we actually want to do this? Is to avoid this situation when we have like multiple copies of the same file, essentially. Or different version of the same file. And as you can see, sometimes naming is not great because you might think that you finished with something, but then you get more comments and then you start changing that name until it's way too long and you don't even know which one is the last version. And it's also important to keep track of who did what, especially if you're collaborating with different people. There's another pretty picture in here. So same thing about the need to keep track of documents without having multiple copies and not knowing exactly which one is the latest one. So when you collaborate with people, if you use version control, it will not only tell you what changed in the document, but also who changed what and at what time, the exact documents that were changed, and you could actually set up a workflow that you approve what documents go into the final version as well. So this Git itself doesn't do this, but platforms like GitHub, they do that really well. So Git is not as complicated as it might seem initially. We follow these 4 basic steps when we do version control in our own machine. So basically, what we need to do first is basically introduce ourselves to Git using the option git config from configuration, as we see here. We only do this once in our computer. If it's our own computer, our personal computer, no one else uses it, and we always want to use the same username and password, we can use git config global. So that means that it will be applied all the time, or git config, and then our username and password for that session only, or that repository only. Then when we want to start tracking changes, we use this function git init. So git initialize, we use it only once when we start our version control. And then every time that we want to track any changes or any files that need tracking, we use the function git add, because we're adding a file to our version control system, and then we save the changes and have a record of what exactly changed, who changed it, and any messages associated with them using the command git commit. So those are the very basic steps that we follow when we work in our own machine. So this will be a little bit different when we connect to GitHub, but with Git locally, this is what we follow. Yes, go to the next one. So when we do the commits, which is that last step that we saw, step 4, that is the actual saving of changes and tracking what changed, we need to add a message to it. So often people start with really nice comments, you know, what exactly they did, why they did it, which is great because if we want to ever refer to a particular version, we can find it very easily by looking at the comments and see like, oh, you know, today I changed, you know, X part of my document Y. And then, you know exactly what changed, who changed it. But if you don't have comments that are descriptive, it's not useful. So if you have things like, whoops, example this, just to fill in the message option, is not going to be particularly useful. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Don't avoid trying to do that because that's kind of goes against you in a way. So before I go into this, we're going to practice those 4 initial steps. So we're going to configure Git first. We're going to initialize a repository. We're going to add a file so we can start tracking things, and then we're going to commit those changes so we can actually record this. So I'm just going to exit this. And you should be able to access Git bash. So if you're using a Windows-based computer, you just go into your Windows menu in there. You can type it Git bash, and it will come up. I already have it open in there. So we'll come up with something like this. In Mac computers, you can just use the terminal and it will accept all the commands that we're going to look at. So now we're going to start with configuring things. So just remember, you always, oops, what's going on? We always call Git first because this is the software that we're using to do the tracking. And now I want to do the configuration. So remember that it's git config. And as I mentioned before, if we want to do it, introduce ourselves just once in our computer, so it always uses the same details, we just go -- and global. So it applies these to any time that we do use version control using Git. Then we're going to go, okay, user.name. So these, if you already created a GitHub account, your username and your user email will be the ones that you use to create your GitHub account. If you don't have a GitHub account, you can use whatever option you prefer, but just make sure that when you do create a GitHub account, you use the same username and the same email address so they know that it's the same person that is doing the changes. So you can put whatever you like here. This is my handle in GitHub. I just note that I put the quotation marks around my username. But then, you know, I don't have to use that. I can use my actual name. So if I want to, I can just go my full name like this. So it does accept spaces in between words. So don't feel like you have to just use everything together. So that's my handle. And then I'm just going to go enter. And it's going to think about it. And it's going to be like, OK, I know what you mean now. I have accepted that username. Then I'm going to add an email address. So instead of like going git, config, and global all over again, I can just use my arrow keys in the keyboard. And if I go up, it will show me what I wrote just before. So everything is the same except my email here. And it won't be username, but it will be user email. So instead of writing the whole thing, I'm just going to add that little bit in there. And my email address is actually my handle followed by a very old email address in there. So just make sure that it has git config. So you're configuring Git. I'm going to apply it globally. So again, that means that every time that I use Git in my computer, it will choose this username and email address. And in quotation marks, I need to include either my username if I use user.name or my email address if I use user.email. And that's it. I have introduced myself to Git, which is very straightforward. Now, every time that I make any changes, Git will know that it was me making those changes. And the last thing that I want to mention here is that when you use Macs or Linux-based computers and Windows computers, they sometimes don't talk to each other very well. So when you put an enter in any document, so you go like to the next line, that enter is represented in different ways depending on the operating system. So to make things standardized, so the computer doesn't get confused about what that actual next line means, we're going to use this command, git. I'm going to configure it. Again, I'm going to make it applied globally, so it doesn't, I don't have to set it every time. I'm just going to go core, and it's auto crlf. By the way, if I'm writing something, for example, core dot, and then I go like this, and then I go tab, it will complete things as well. So I don't have to type the whole thing. And then I'm going to put true. So I just have my notes in here, just because I have done it only once. So this is for Windows-based computers. So if you have a Windows-based computer, use exactly what I've used in there. And if you are a Mac user, you use input, input instead of true. Everything else is exactly the same. And then it will mean that Windows and Mac or Linux will use that same way to represent that enter or when you add a line. And then I don't know if you've actually received an email with instructions, but we are going to use a text editor for parts of this workshop. And if you have a preferred editor like I do, you can actually set your preferred editor, so we always use the same thing. So you can do, again, the git config. So we're going to configure git again. I'm going to use the global again. And I'm going to say, OK, core dot editor. So again, if I go like this and then tab, it will auto-complete it. And then I like this thing called atom. And then I just go like this. And if I go enter, it's going to think about it. It's going to tell me, OK, it's fine. So if it doesn't give me anything back, it means that it has worked. If it didn't work, then it will complain and it will write me an error message. So now you may be wondering, how do I know that I have actually done anything? Like, is there any way to check? And there is. So we can just go git config, and then we go list. Oops. So you see an error in there. So there we go. So the error was that instead of putting those 2 dashes, I just put list. And that is not the correct way of doing it. So it's config -- list. And as you saw before, it tells me, OK, that's wrong. There's an error in there. There's no such thing as list. But once I put it correctly, then it does give me what I need. So in here, I can check whether I have done things correctly. So I can check that the username is my handle, which is great. My username email is the email associated to my GitHub account, which is also great. I can also see that my editor is Atom, which is the one that I like to use. You may have a different one. And this is setting that new line thing to be always the same in Mac and in Windows. Steffi, you have a question.
What is the
This one is, I'm not sure why the wait, but that's just the way you set it. You use that atom space -- wait to call it. Yes, I'm not sure why they use the wait, to be honest. So that's it. That's how we configure Git. That's how we kind of introduce ourselves to Git. And do we have any questions? Anyone online or here? Remember that you can use the Etherpad if you prefer as well. Are we all good here? Yes, excellent. Please do ask questions because most of the time you know, someone will have the same question than you. So don't feel bad about like, oh, you know, I don't know enough or whatever. Oh, and another good thing to kind of know is if you ever forget how to set things, you can ask for help. So if you go git config, and then it's either --help, and it will open up the help for this particular function. So it opens a, it's going to show you, so it opens a website like this, and it tells you, oh, this is git config and all the options that you can use. So this is how you access the documentation, and you can find out what's the option or the function that you need to do whatever it is that you would like to do. So I'm just going to close this. I'm just going to show my git bash again. So that was git config --help. You can also just use git -h, and it will also give you a help, but it's actually printed in the console instead of opening up a website. But it's the same information. You see here how Git has different options. So it has the global, the system, locally, and all the different actions that are associated with Git. So those are the two ways to access help in case you don't remember how to you know, do whatever it is that you need to do. Okay. So now that we have introduced ourselves to Git, we are able to start making a new repository to track changes. So the first thing that I'm going to do is in here, I'm going to find out where exactly in the computer my Git bash is actually pointing to. So I'm going to do this pwd, which is print working directory, and it will tell me exactly where I am. So in here, it says that I'm in a disk P, which is not where I want to be. So I can change that using the command cd for change directory. Then I'm just going to go C, because I want to be in the C disk. Want to use users. Again, you can just go tab. I know my username, and I just want to be in the desktop in this case. So now you can see that instead of this wiggly line, that it's basically the home directory, which in this case is P, I am now sitting in this directory. So this is equivalent to just going to our Windows Explorer. I'm just going to open up the Windows Explorer here, for example. So all I've done is basically tell the computer, go to my desktop. So that's where I'm sitting. So if I go, and now that I'm in the desktop, I use this ls to list all the files and folders that I have in this particular directory. All these things that it's printing are exactly the same things that my Windows Explorer is showing me. So you can see these, for example, 10 new insights in climate science is in there, Obsidian is in there, and it's in here as well. And the good thing about this is that it tells you, it highlights different types of files. So for example, we have just PDF files that are in this kind of gray, whitish sort of color, and then these hyperlinks or that will actually open a particular piece of program that you have in your computer are highlighted in this case in this bright green. So make me admin will be this one, which will open up this new program. So right, now, when you're ready in your whatever working directory that you want to start your session, you can create a directory. So we're going to learn how to do this using Git bash. It's using mk to make, and then dir for directory. So we're making a new directory, and then we're just going to name it, I don't know, something. So we're going to name it IMAS. And if we go enter, again, it doesn't give us any information or anything failed. But then if we go ls, and print that, we can now see that IMAS is in there, and it's in this different color that is a bit purplish. And if we go into our Windows Explorer, we can see that there's now a folder called IMAS. So it's equivalent. We can both work with both of them. So if we want to change to the IMAS directory, does anyone remember the command that we used before? CD, yes. So we go CD, and then we just go IMAS. And then if I print ls, nothing happens. And that's because if we go into IMAS here, that's an empty folder. So it's giving me the right things. Now, I'm going to use IMAS to create my version control thingy. So we're going to remember, if I go back into my presentation, so the first 4 steps was first introduce ourselves, which done. And then if we want to initialize a repository, is using git init. So that's exactly what we're going to do now. So we're going to go git init, and that's it. That's all we're going to say. So now it's telling us, OK, we have actually started a repository in this particular folder. So we can check if that's in there. Does anyone remember the command that I just used to print the things in there? ls, excellent. And then nothing happened. But what if we check our folder? The IMAS folder does have that .git, but why are we not seeing it? It's because this is actually a hidden file. So if you don't have hidden files activated in your computer, you can go to this tab, View, and then Show Hide Hidden Files. So if I untick that, this will not be there anymore, which is essentially what's happening in here. But then if I show hide and then click again, that hidden items will show up. So essentially, we need to click or tick that box in our Git bash by using -a. So it's like everything, all. And if I do that, then it's like, oh, then it appears in there. So it is showing me all my hidden files. So now we know we can use either the Windows Explorer or whatever you use in your Mac, or the Git bash. We can do this in both, and it will give us the exact same thing. So now we've done this. Like we actually need to start tracking things. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the name of our branch, which is like where we're storing all this information. So if you see here, it says master. So there is a movement saying that we should change this because it kind of refers to master and slave. That's the actual terms that were used. So we can change the name of that to main, for example. That is more common now. So we use git. We're going to use this option checkout, and we're going to use -b, and I'm just going to call it main. So this is how I change that name from master to main. So if I do enter, now it says, OK, we've switched to a new branch, and it's called main. And now you can see that it went from being master here to main. This is not necessary. This is just if you ever want it. You can name it whatever you want, but that's kind of like what the trend is now. OK, so we can start checking how, like what's being tracked in this particular repository using git status. That would literally give us an idea of what's happening or tell us what's happening with this repository. And it says that I am on a branch called main. I have not made any commits yet. The commits refers to any changes that I have saved and I'm tracking. And there's actually nothing to commit here. And it says in here, it's actually giving me some good instructions. I can start creating files, and then I can start tracking them by using git add, which is the third step in our little list in here. So we're going to do that now. I'm just going to create a new file. So I can either make a file using the bash. So I'm just going to use Atom, which is the text editor that I really like. And I'm just going to call it, I don't know, ocean. And then ocean.txt. So it will be just a text file, simple text file. So by using Atom, I'm using that particular software to create these text files. So if I go enter, does take a little bit of a while. It will open up Atom, which has opened in the other screen here. So now Atom, it's very small, but it says ocean.txt in there. I can't make it bigger, can I? And then I can just go, I really like the ocean. You can just write whatever you like in here. And I like Atom because it has a few things. It tells you if things are not safe. So in here, it's not safe if this is a little circle that is blue. If I save it, it will disappear. And if I make another change, it will be back again. So that's what I like about this. It gives me this extra stuff. And I can also connect this to Git and GitHub. If you see at the very bottom on the right-hand side of your screen, I can actually connect this straight away, so I don't have to use Git bash to track any changes. So okay, I'm just going to close that because that's how I create a file. And if I go back to Git bash, I can check if my file exists using ls. So it only appears as if ocean.txt is in there. Does anyone remember what we use with ls to show all files? Yes, so -a, so if we go -a, then everything comes up. And if we look at our Windows Explorer, we see that there are both of them there. So now, if I'm lazy and I don't want to open the actual text file in Atom, I can check the contents directly in my Git bash using cat, and then the name of my file, so ocean.txt. And it will print it. I really like the ocean. That's all it has, which is great. That's a way that I can avoid having to open things up. So now what happens if I go and check what's happening with my repository using Git status? It's telling me more things in here. So I'm still on that branch called main. I'm still not, I don't have any commits yet, but now it's telling me that there are some untracked files. So there are some files included in my repository, but I'm not actually recording any of this information yet. And the good thing is that it tells me how to do that. It says git add, the name of the file, and then it will start tracking changes. And at the moment, there's no commits, but there are untracked files, essentially. So we're going to listen to git, and then go git add, and the name of my file. So ocean.txt. So how do I check if there has been any changes? I go again, git status, and now it's telling me something different. I still have not made any commits, but now they are being tracked. And it's telling me that there is this particular file called ocean.txt that is now being tracked. And then the last thing that I need to do, if I follow my little cheat sheet here, is if I want to start tracking the changes, I just need to commit them. So if I go back here, I go git commit, then I'm just going to use -m so I can add a message, and then the message goes in quotation marks. So this is my first commit. And then when I'm happy, I just go enter, and it's telling me, yep, it has one file change. There's only one insertion, which refers to that one line that I enter in that file. And then it's giving me information about a particular ID that I can use to track these changes. So if I go once more and try to check what my version control is doing, does anyone remember what it was that I was using to do this? Git status, thank you. So So git status, I check, and now it says, okay, I'm still on that main branch. There's nothing to commit now, and my working tree is clean. So every change that I've made has now been tracked. Essentially, that's what it means. And that's it. That's like basically how we start tracking changes in using Git only locally. So if I'm using my own computer, this is how we'll do things. So do we have any questions at the moment? Online, does anyone want to raise their hand? No. No, it doesn't look like it. Do we have any questions here? Yeah. Is this the, wait.
This is probably the.
Oh, yes.
So that's what you changed it by the enter
yes.
input thing.
So basically it's not an error, it's more of a warning that is coming up in Steffi's screen. It's just telling her that because she didn't actually set this new line to be set to this like default that will work with every operating system, it's warning her that the new line that she's using is different to the default, and it may cause problems. So if Steffi works with someone who uses a Mac, and even if they don't make any changes to the document and they send it back, Git will be like, oh no, this is different. And then it will try to override things, and then it will cause problems. So it's recommendable that you do use that. Yes, but you don't have to, but it's just like, I find it really useful. Yes, but it's really up to you at the end what you think is best for you. But it's just a warning, so you can still track things. I'm just going to go back to my useful commands here. So basically, these ones are good to know. So you can start checking, we just saw git status to check like what exactly our repository is doing. Do we have any files that we forgot to track or any changes that we actually forgot to store? That we'll know that by using that git status. If we want to see how different files change between different versions, we can use this option of git diff from difference. If we realize that we actually made a mistake, so we were working in a code and we actually made things didn't work, and everything broke, our code is not working anymore, we don't need to panic. We just go like, actually, I don't want to save these changes. I can just use git checkout to discard all these changes as long as I haven't committed them. So if I added the file but didn't commit, I can just discard that using git checkout. But then if I want to actually kind of go back to something that was committed, there is an option to do that. That will be git revert. So I'm just going to revert these files to another point in time. And I will show you how we can check how to track the version that we want to change it back to. And then git reset, it will just change the repository, all the repository to a different point in time as well. So I'm just going to cover all this, but this is kind of like a useful list to keep in mind. And we're going to go through it so they are a little bit more clear on what they all mean. And probably one that I'm missing here as well is git log, which will give us like a logbook of all the changes that we have made. So if I go back to my git bash, if I go git log, enter, then it's going to be like, okay, remember that we only made one commit. So that's what it's showing me here. This is the commit. This is the ID. It's a unique ID that is associated to the commit that I made just before. If you see here, it's using my handle as the author, and it's using my email address as well. So it tells you exactly who changed this file, and it also tells you the date and the time and even the time zone when this happened. And then it's telling me this is what changed when you made the commit. So if I was sharing this with someone else, then it will have multiple commits. Then it will tell me who changed what at whatever point in time. So before, I'm just going to show you how we can keep tracking changes. So if we go back to our little text file here, I can actually open the text file here and change it directly in my, where is it? Oh, it's stuck in between here somewhere. So I just need to get this. There we go. So because it's a text file, I can just use my notepad to make changes. So this is just to show you that you don't actually have to use the command line. You can make changes with whatever program that you like. And I'm just going to add my name in here. So Denise is leading this workshop. Can't spell anymore. There we go. So I just made that change in there. I'm just going to save that, and I'm just going to close it. So does anyone remember how I can print the things in a text file in the console? Cat, excellent. So if I go cat, the name of the file, which was ocean.txt, then it's telling me, oh, you actually have 2 lines now, which is great. So that's just to show you, you can just drag whatever you like using whatever program that you need. So how do I change what's changed in here? I don't know if anyone online wants to contribute in the chat maybe. How do I change what's happening to my repository? Or anyone here? No, just to see what changed. So I changed a file. I want to see git status. Excellent, thank you. Oops, where am I here? So if I go git status, enter, now it's telling me again that I am on that main branch still. But then I have some changes that I haven't committed. And again, it's telling me, oh, you need to add that file. It's telling me I can use this other option if I don't want to keep the changes. And then I have to, commit them if I really want to keep track of all these files. So I'm just going to listen to Git and do that. But I just wanted to show you one of the other options that I have in here, which is this git diff. So we can see the differences between different commits. So you see how this works. So if I go git diff, so it's telling me, okay, at the moment, this refers to the first version of the ocean.txt file. So it's it's comparing it to the second version, which has that second line. So it's telling me this is the original in here. And then I've added this line, and it's even showing me with a plus, and then it's in a different color, so I can really notice what's changed. And it says that I do not have a new line at the end of the file. So it just literally has those 2 lines. So this is useful in case, you kind of want to see quickly what changed before you make any commitments or add anything really. So then I can start adding things and committing things. But I'm just going to show you what happens if I skip a step, for example. So you remember in a little processing here, we had to initialize the repository only once, then add a file every time that we want to track change, and then we save those by using commit. So it's always add and then commit. So what happens if I just go git commit, like we did before, with M for the message, and then this is my second commit. So what happens if I do this? Oops. Git is actually telling me Actually, you can't commit anything because changes are not a stage. That means that I haven't added anything. So because I haven't added anything to my repository, it can't save any changes. So it's telling me again, you need to use git add before you can make the commit. So we're going to do that now. So we go git add, we go ocean.txt, and then if we do git commit, then it's happy. And then I can check the status using git status, and then it's telling me I'm still in the main branch. There's nothing to commit. Everything is as it should be. Everything is being dragged at the moment. So do we have any questions until now? Yes?
So this is when we're doing one file, right?
Yes.
If we have like 4 files.
Yes, I can show you that.
And it's the lazy person who's not done the something. Day to day. Like 3 days later, you have done, changes on previous files. Right?
Yes. So usually it's better if you add each file separately, because if you ever need to go back to a previous state, then it will only be for that file. Because if you add all the, you can add all the files at the same time if you have to, but then if you want to revert to a previous state, but you only want that revert to apply to one file, you won't be able to do it because everything was done at once. Yes, it is possible, but it's just not recommended simply because it kind of messes things up if you ever need to revert. So it's, but then again, it's up to you what you decide to do. So I'm just going to kind of go with what Steffi said. So I'm just going to create a file using my my Windows Explorer. So if I just go right click, new, and I go, for example, I don't know, what am we going to use? Microsoft Word document. So I don't know, I'm just going to call it C. So now I have a doc document in here. I'm going to open this, which is opening in the other screen. This is my second document. And I'm just going to save this, and I'm just going to close it. So now I have 2 files in there. Can anyone tell me how do I check in my console if I have, what are the files that I have in my folder at the moment? Does anyone remember? Which one? ls, yes. So if we go ls, now it's 2 files in there, which matches what I see in my screen, my Windows Explorer in there. And then how do I check what's happening with my version control? Yeah, so we go git status, and then it's telling me, okay, you have a new untrack file, and it's called c.docx. So it's telling me, like, even if I make this new file from another way with using a completely different software, it will pick it up because it's still included in that folder that is tracking all these changes. So as long as it's in a folder that has that .git, it's fine. So now how do I start tracking changes here? Anyone who's not a Steffi, tell me. Anyone would like to contribute? Believe it. What do we do? How do I start tracking changes to this file, the C.doc? Git commit. So let's try git commit -m, and we want to see tracking C docs. So you think this is the one? Okay, so we'll see if this is correct. This is not correct. And why is it not correct? Can you tell me? Sorry?
We didn't add.
Exactly, so we didn't add it. So we just go git add, the name of the file. Go enter. And then if we go git commit, yes. And now how can I check that this is done? Excellent, thank you. Git status, everything is done. We're all happy now. And do we have any questions now? Anyone online? Or anyone here? Nothing? Okay, so we're happy in tracking and adding things. So I'm just going to show you, I'm just going to make a few changes to documents so we can see the log a little bit better. So I'm just going to go back and use Atom to open that ocean.txt file, and I'm just going to make a few more changes. So it's opening up in there. And now, I don't know, what should I put in there? So we can go, Jacob is helping Denise. There we go. I'm just going to change that. I'm going to save it. I'm just going to close it, and I'm going to go back here. So anyone online would like to tell me how can I print things in my screen in the Git bash? I don't know. I'm just going to pick up a name randomly. Claire, would you like to tell, like, type it? What do we use? Excellent. Thank you, Claire. So yes, we use cat, and then we use ocean.txt. So we just need to make sure that we provide the name of the file. And it's telling me these are the 3 lines that you have in your repository, which is great. So now can Jennifer maybe tell me how I check what's happening with my repository now that I make these changes? Is she gone? No, she's still there. Jennifer. Status, excellent. So Git status. And then we can see, yes, we need to we haven't tracked it, but there's a change. How do we start tracking changes, Jennifer, or anyone? No? Yes, Shen, so, sorry if I mispronounced your name, is right. So we go git add first. We need to make sure that we point to the right file. And then we do what Jennifer says, which is git commit. So we git commit. Okay, we put a message using the M flag, they call it, the -M, and then adding an extra line. Just make sure that, you know, when you actually do track changes, you put comments that are actually useful to you. And then we're going to check once more what's happening, and everything is fine now. Yes, we have a hand up by Jennifer.
Hello.
Yes.
Am I muted? Yeah. I'm just wondering, I did something silly and I just typed cat and pressed enter. And now I just have like an endless kind of open console, and I can't get back to like typing commands. Does that make sense?
Yes. Maybe try either escape. If that doesn't help, maybe you can go Control Q.
Control Q. Ooh. Oh my goodness, what have I done?
No, if that doesn't work, then just close the window and open it again.
Yeah, I think I'm there. Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.
Sorry, do you have a question?
I got in trouble too. I did git add or something, and I didn't save the file name, and I can't go back. And I know I can close the window, but then I just
cancel that.
Just cancel.
So you open, I think you open
without putting the message.
Nano. So that's to basically your version of Atom. It's another way of changing things. So you can just go Shift C, I think it's. And then
I'll close it.
Yeah. And then no. There we go. Excellent. Amazing. Okay. So where were we? Now, yes, git log. So if we go here, we go git log. If you remember from before, it's telling us a list of the things that we have changed in our repository. So in here, now we have multiple commits. So if we go up here, it's telling us we've done a few changes, and then at the end, it's telling us first commit, second commit, tracking a line, everything is in there. And you can see that this whole numbers and letters, there's like 20 of them or whatever, that's a unique identifier to that particular commit, to all the changes that you made at that point. These can be super long to go through, but there's other ways that you can point to like a more summarized version, for example. So if we go here and we go git log -- one line, these will print one line for each one of those commits. So instead of having like all this like information with who did it, when did they do it, exactly what was changed, and that super long commit ID, it gives us a very shortened version of that commit ID that is still unique to that particular commit, and it's telling us just like the message that we put in the commit. And that's another good way of seeing things in a nice summarized way. The other thing that we can use is, for example, if we know what version we want to look at, we can go git log, and for example, I want to see 2 versions before, I go minus and then 2. So that will print the last 2 versions. So it's telling me, it's adding an extra line, which is equivalent to that last commit that I did here. And then it's telling me the one before that, which is tracking C docs. And I can do the same thing. So I can, obviously, I can only go back the amount of times that I have commit. So I can go, in this case, -4, and it will print all of them. But then what happens if I go -10? I know I have only 4. Still works. It didn't work before. Anyway, often when you go -10, it goes like, actually, there's not that many commits in here, so I won't be able to show you everything. Okay, so that's basically how we can start looking at the different commits and start identifying the version that we want to kind of look at. So the other, if I go back to my presentation, the other options that I show you was this git diff, which we briefly saw before. So if I go back into my thingy here, so if we do git diff, we go head, which if you see here, head is always, well, not always, but most of the time, is the very last commit. So if you see here, this is our last commit. You see that was done at 2:57. That's the head. So I'm just going to compare my head, and then I just go like that tilde. And then I just want to compare it with the one before, for example. So I go 1. And then I need to refer to what document I want to refer to. So I'm just going to look at ocean.txt, for example. So it's telling me, okay, you have those, it's the same file that is comparing, but it's like 2 different versions. So it's telling me that this was in the original. These lines are in gray. Then it says that I deleted this line, but then I wrote it again, and then I included another line in here. So, and same thing, we can use, -3, for example, in here, and it will make that comparison between the head, which is usually the latest one, and then whatever versions before. But then if I go beyond the number of commits, I think it should work. So if I go 10, it should, yeah, there we go. It does fail in here because it's telling me that there are no 10 commits, and it can't compare to anything that doesn't exist, essentially. Do we have any questions so far? No? It's all good? Do we have any questions online? Let me check. No? Okay. So I think we're all good, but again, please do ask questions. Don't feel shy. You can use the Etherpad as well. Okay, so we're gonna go back here. What else can we show you? we can also use this. One question. Let's see. Only the folder with .git files being tracked right now. That is correct. So if we go to here, for example, this is where the Git folder is. That's what's being tracked. Nothing above this. So if we look at our path, I'm just going to make this bigger. So if I look at my path here, IMAS is inside desktop. So things that are in desktop are not being tracked. But if I make a new folder here, and I call it, I don't know, data test, for example. This data test folder will be tracked because it's inside the folder that is being tracked in here. But what happens if I go git status? It's telling me there's nothing to track. And why do you think that might be the case? Any ideas? Yeah, they're not files, so it's just existing there, but it's empty, so there's nothing like worth tracking essentially. But then I can just create new files in here, and then it will show you the files that are included in your repository but are not currently being tracked. So if we go and create multiple files like a txt, for example, no, this is not the right place, sorry. No, that's not the one. So let's go here. It's going to create new files. I'm just going to make it just one text document in there. So I'm just going to call it a.txt. And if I go in here and go git status, then it's telling me, oh, actually, there's this data task folder that you are not actually tracking. And there are things inside that folder that you need to track. So we can still track these changes. And it will be included under this repository that we have just created. But it has to be inside the folder, not outside. So let's see, how do we add? We just go git add, we go data task, and we can, what was it called? A.txt. There we go. So now if we go git status, then it's telling me that I have added this file that is being tracked right now. And how do I make sure that I save the changes? If anyone online would like to contribute, maybe. Who else is in there? So we can go git commit message, and this is my new file. And if I go status again, then it's telling me that now it's happy. So you can track different files that are contained within different folders as long as they are in that main folder that contains the .git folder. Oh yes. If you have different projects, then it's fine. Yeah. So if I have, there will be a problem if I try to initialize. Where's my mouse? Here. So if I try to initialize another repository here, it will fail because I'm already tracking it. But then if I'm in the desktop even, and I create a new folder in the desktop with another project, like completely unrelated, I can still track it because there are two different entities essentially. Okay, so where are we? I was going to show you something and I forgot. I think it was git difference. So I'm just going to go to that git log one line. Okay, so that's the list of all the changes that we've made. So what happens if I want to check git diff of what I have in the latest version and this version here, for example. I'm just choosing something. So copy and then paste. So I'm just going to do that. And this was, I think, an extra line in Ocean.txt. So then you see that it's comparing my latest version, which is this one here, with this particular version. And it's telling me these are the changes between those two. And I can just pick and choose whatever commit I want. So if I can change that with the one that I just copied, that it was the very first one. So you see that the very first one really only had this one line, and my latest one has 3 lines, essentially. So that's a good way that you can use this git one line. You can check the differences between different things. So what happens if, let's go back to our data task folder, and if I go, and I go, this is a mistake. And I save that, and I close it. So let's say git status, okay, it's telling me that there's a file that has been changed that I'm not tracking. So how do I track it? Anyone? Excellent, thank you. And then we're just going to be like data task and the text file.
How about this?
Yep.
Git commit dash a is a shortcut or
Git commit dash a.
Yeah.
That's all. Commit all changes, like everything. Yeah. So git add to add all the things in there without mentioning a particular file, which is what Steffi mentioned before. Like, how do I try, like, add everything at once? That's what you do. You just go like, oh, there's a bunch of changes. I'm just going to add everything. And then the way you record all those changes is by using git commit dash a. So every change will be in there. Yeah. So what happens, as we saw before, if I go data task a, this is a mistake. So I already added that. What do I do now? So if I go to my presentation, I show you that there's this checkout to discard changes when I haven't committed them. So I have added them, but I haven't committed. So this is exactly what I can do here. So if I go git checkout, checkout, and then the name of the file, which is data task. Okay. Now it's updated. So if I go git status, so it's telling me that, why is it still doing it? Wait a second. There we go. Sorry, it was git, just git checkout, and it should do it now. So if I go to the log, one line. So now there's nothing in there to commit. So I just kind of, no, but this is not working quite right. Wait. Checkout. There we go. That's what I did. So now it should work. Let me just double check. Okay, so I checked out, and then I used that ID for the previous version that was saved, but that didn't include that change that I made. And then I just pointed to the file that I was referring to. So if I go to my log again, so it will tell me that it still remains exactly the same as it was before. And if I go and check that file. Now that file is empty. So I made a mistake. I didn't actually want to do it. I went to use checkout, chose the ID for whatever version I actually need to save, and then refer to the file that I was interested in kind of dismissing those changes. So that's what we do. Git, checkout, ID, number, and then the file. And then if we do a cat, we see that it doesn't have anything. And if I check my file in here and I open it up, it doesn't have anything. So it has successfully ignored all these changes. Do we have any more questions at the moment? Doesn't look like it, no. Okay, so as I showed you before, it's to kind of I'm just going to make the changes again. Another change in here. So if I do the same thing, git add, and then it's the data task one and the txt, I go git status, and it's telling me that I have added it, but I haven't recorded anything yet. What happens if instead of using git checkout, the ID number, and then the file, what happens if I forgot to mention the file and I only include that ID number? So if I go like, I'm just going to copy this one. So what happens if I do this? So this will happen. So now things are broken. So it's telling me that I am in a detached head state. I don't know if you remember before that I mentioned the head is often the same as the latest one. Well, sometimes if you make changes like this, they check out and apply it to a previous commit, the head is not pointing to that latest one, but it's pointing somewhere else. So then Git doesn't know what to do, and you have to basically make sure that you point it to the right place so you can start making tracks again properly. Because at the moment, we won't be able to do anything. The good thing is that it is telling you what happens. So you have that detached head state, and we can actually fix it. We just need to go git head. Wait a second, it was a git checkout. Git checkout. And we go, you remember how in here we call this main? And at the moment it has this number, which refers to our ID number. So what we're going to do is git checkout, and we're going to refer to our main. So it has switched now. So in here it says that when the head was detached, the head was pointing to this particular version, but now it has switched the head back to the main. So the main branch that I'm kind of like where I'm keeping all the track of all the changes, and now it's happy. So if I go git status, then it's fine. Then I still have that file that I haven't discarded, the changes. So I just need to make sure that I do git checkout, the name of the, the ID for that specific commit, and then the name of the file. So I avoid separating the head from the main. So if I go git status, then we're all good. And if I check that file with a cat, then we see that it's empty again. So was that clear, or should I go through it again? No, you didn't get it? Oh no, it's all good. Okay, cool. It's all good? Yeah, awesome. Online, I don't know. Are we all good online? I guess no. Yes, excellent. Thank you, Chris. Awesome. So Now we've seen a few things, how to fix a few errors in case we kind of come up with errors. We have seen how to start tracking changes. We have seen that we can track changes from different folders as long as they're contained within that main repository. We have also seen that we can track files of different types, not only text files that are created directly through the console. What else are we seeing? How to check the log, how to go back and check differences between different files using git diff. And what else? I think that's basically everything. Like we've covered everything that I kind of had in here. Oh, git rebirth. Well. So here, git reset. So if we want to change the entire repository to a previous version, we can use that. So I'm just going to show you here. So I'm going to go git log one more time. One line. So let's say I want to go to this one in particular. So I go git reset. So it changes to a previous version. So it's git reset. Then the whatever version, I'm just choosing this one at this stage, and then oh no, it's reset. Sorry, not rest. And it will change everything back to that point. How do I check if this has happened? Does anyone know? How can I change? How can I check? It's actually here in the screen somewhere.
So you go back to the log?
Yes, exactly. So you go back to the log and do the one line again. And then we see that that's what we chose. That's now the latest one, the head. So that means that the last version is not there anymore. So we have gotten rid of that because we no longer need it. So that's kind of like we go to a previous point in time, and that's when this sort of thing is useful. Like if we really break everything or corrupt our file or whatever, we can just go back to the previous version and everybody's happy. Okay, so then I'm going to show you as well how to ignore files. So what happens if so I'm just going to make in the data folder, I'm just going to make another file in here. I'm just going to make a Word document. I'm just going to call it B. And I'm just going to, if I do an ls in here, for example, it's going to print everything that I have. And then if I want to see what's in the data task one, I just go ls data task, and it will print the things that I have inside that data task folder. I'm just going to make another directory, another folder. I'm just going to call it, I don't know, workshops, for example. So you will see that workshops appears in there, which is great. And now I'm just going to change directories using cd. I'm going to move myself to workshops, and I'm going to start creating files using this option touch. So I'm just going to call it A, that, for example, B, that, C dot, whatever. I'm just going to make up a few things. And then if I go ls, I can see that those are the files that are in this folder. So if I go into workshops, I'll see that I have 3 files in there. So what happens if I check what's being tracked? It's going to tell me that I now have a few folders and a few files. Why are you not working? A few files that are not committed. And I'm actually going back to, if you see here, I'm actually inside the workshops folder. I don't want to be there. I want to go back one folder to the IMAS. I just go cd dash, and that takes me back one step. So now in the IMAS, I am in the IMAS folder. So if I do an ls, then it will show me the data task workshops, exactly what I have here. So we can start ignoring files using a git ignore file. So we can use Atom, for example, to create this file, or we can create it from here, it doesn't matter. So if we go atom.git ignore, all one word, it has to have a dot beforehand though. So I'm just gonna open that, and it's gonna open this one here. So now, if I look at my little files, let's say that I want to ignore, in the workshops, I want to ignore these dat files. So I could go workshops /a.dat, b.dat, or whatever, but I can just go and use these star and then .dat. So the star is like a special character that it can be 0 or any number of characters followed by .dat. So anything, name however you want to name it, as long as it ends in that, it will be ignored. So before I show you this, by the way, I should probably do a git. Oh, we did a git status already, I think. Yep, so it's telling me that workshops are not yet tracked. So if I add workshops, for example, and I do a git status again, so it's telling me that these files are ready to be added, but they are not, committed, but they are not currently tracked. So if I add this star.dat, it will ignore all these files, and I can ignore as well complete folders if I want to. So let's say that I don't actually want to track a new folder. I'm just going to create a new folder here. Not tracking. I can actually go and add no tracking in here, followed by a /. So that indicates a folder. And then I save this, and then I close it. And then I can see if I do a git status again. Why is it not doing it? So I have added the git ignore. Sorry, let me just open that up again. I think that's what that. So any folders that contain any files ending in .dat. That's what I want to do. So now you see that my .dat files are not being added in there. Okay. So I'm just going to add my git ignore. And I can start tracking things. So git commit ignoring files. Oh no. Well, we can use the checkout option now that I made this mistake. So if I go git status, I can see that it's telling me that it has committed the files, but if I go to my log, one line, I can just revert it back to reset to this one here. So I'm going to reset it. So I'm not sure why that's not working. So if I go to status, okay, then we go to just gonna try git ignore again. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but it shouldn't be. Let me just try workshops. Because that should do it. Yes, it's still, I don't understand. It's exactly the same. Let me check my notes. Why is it not working? So I have wrote it. It is git ignore. I am not sure why this is not working. This is what my notes say. But yeah, I don't know. It's very strange. So usually what you do is like, if you want to, you just use this to ignore things that you don't want to track, but for some reason it's not doing it here. Let me just git ignore, git ignore, yeah. And it's the right information. So if I just go, okay. We can ignore the whole folder, but for some reason it's not letting me ignore everything that ends in a particular. Yeah, this is really strange. I don't know why it's not working. Anyway, but if you want to ignore complete folders, you can just do the name of the folder followed by a dash. So that means that everything in this folder will be ignored. It should work. I don't know why it's not working now. When you use the name of a folder followed by dash, for example, and then that's the name of the ending of the file, or even as I put it before, just go like this and it will search it anywhere. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing wrong. So I might need to get back to you on this just to check what happened there. But if we just ignore these two folders, we can see that, again, if we do the status, we can see that it still needs git ignore to be added and the data task to be added. So we can do that, git add. So I can show you what Steffi was asking before. So it's telling us that if I just do add, it still needs to be specified what I mean by this. So if I want to, I can do it one by one. So git add, git ignore, git that data task, or I can just go git and then dot, and that will add everything. And then if I go git status, for example, then we can see it added git ignore and both documents or files in data task. And then I can just go git commit, and I put a message in there. I am tracking 3 files, for example. And then you see that instead of giving you just one thing, it's now telling you that there are multiple files that you have saved. And then you can check the status, and now everything is fine. So it doesn't tell you to do any tracking for the not tracking folder or the workshops folder. It's tracking basically what's included in the data task folder and what's included in the main repository folder. And that's kind of it for how to track your files in your own computer. Now we can actually connect to GitHub. So we have about half an hour. So this is probably going to be a little bit quick. So should I assume that everyone has a GitHub account? Do we have the email and username? Same online. So basically what we usually do use GitHub for, as I mentioned, is to track not only the changes, but also to kind of help with collaborations. And this is kind of like a more complicated thing with the branches, but basically it's like you have this master, which in our case is called main. So that's where all the changes that we know work and are awesome are going to be kept. But then if you have multiple collaborators that are working in different parts of your project, they can all have like their own copy, let's say, or a branch. So that branch may not necessarily be the same as the main branch here, or the master as it's called here, because they can make multiple changes in there, and then someone needs to approve that before the changes are added to that main branch. So the good thing about this is that if someone is working on a particular part of the project, they can break the code as much as they want to, and once they're ready to release it, they just share it with someone else, it gets approved, and then it goes into that main section without disrupting anyone else's work. So this is kind of like, again, it's like a more complex sort of thing, but as you kind of become more accustomed to Git, this won't look as crazy anymore. So this again is the changes on Git, how we can undo certain things. So we saw checkout, reset, and revert. And I'm actually going to share this a little bit later with information about like how they all differ and how you can use them. And now we're going to connect to our GitHub accounts. So basically, you have two options to connect GitHub to your computer. Before, you only needed your email and your password, but now GitHub has increased security, so they're using these personal access tokens or PATs, or they also use SSH keys, which are really secure. So you have instructions on how to do both. These PAT ones are probably the easiest ones to follow. So if you click on that, once I share it, it's actually pretty straightforward. It's not too bad. So we're going to go through these instructions now. So if I go into my GitHub account, for example, I just go to settings in here. So you can follow this if you like as well. So then we're going to go, so that's where you get the SSH keys, but we're actually going to do the paths. So we're going to go to developer settings. So I'm just going back one more, it's just at the bottom, right there. So you click on that, and then you have a few options, including the paths or personal access tokens. So you see in there, already have a few included there. If I want to create another one, I can. So basically, you need to have one token for a device or for a particular project that you're working on. So I have one for each device that I use, and this is a project that I was involved with a year ago or so. And this will probably appear empty if you haven't used GitHub before. So you just go generate new token. It will ask you for your password. And then you can name it. So you can go my first token. But it's better if you have a name that actually means something. So if this is linked to your university computer, just call it university computer so you can actually identify it or whatever it is. You can set an expiration date. They recommend this for security, just in case someone steals your computer or whatever, they can access it for longer than 30 days, for example. Or if you have a project that it's like short duration, you can do that. You can set it to no expiration, so you don't ever have to do this ever again if you want to. It's not recommended, but it's the option there. And then you can do the custom. So if you want to go anything between 90 days and never, you can do that as well. So you can choose whatever you prefer. And in here, you can give different permissions to this particular key. So if we go back to this page, it actually tells you in here what the minimum permissions are. So you have to go to the repository, because that's how you create repositories from your computer. So we're going to go here, repository, and choose everything. Then anything related to administration of repositories. And we can also delete repositories. So at least those three will allow you to create repositories from your local machine in the cloud in GitHub. If you want, you can add more permissions if you want to, but at least keep those. And then you just generate token, And that's when it will take you to a page. I'm just going to do it here now, just to show you. So if we go generate token, it's telling us, oh, you know, we have created a new token, and it gives you this information here. So this token, it's what you will use instead of a password. So you can copy it by clicking on here, and then you see, oh, it has been copied. It goes into like a tick. And then you can make sure that you use that when we are connecting to GitHub in the next step. So I'm just going to delete this because I don't want anyone accessing my account. There we go. So now that's kind of what we need to set up before connecting our machine to GitHub. So did anyone follow those instructions? Yes, yes, awesome. Anyone online, or do you need a little bit more time? Just let me know. I think you're okay. Okay. So now we can create a new repository. So assuming that everybody is on the same page. Oh. So now I'm just going to go back to my account. And I'm going to create a new repository. So if you go to repositories in here, let's go to this one here, new. And I'm going to call it the same name that I call it in here, which is IMAS. So I'm just going to go, the repository name is IMAS. It's telling me it is available, and it's giving me a green tick. If it's not, then you just need to change it. These options may not appear in yours, like templates and stuff like that. It's fine. If you are associated with different organizations, you will probably have different options like myself. So just make sure that you choose the one that is most appropriate to what you are doing. You can give it a description. So this is a version control workshop, for example. So I can give some information if I really want to. You can decide to make these public or private. So public, obviously, everybody can see it. Private, only you will be able to see this. If you change your mind, you can change it later. But you know, it's probably better to make it public because you know you're able to collaborate with people. Well, no, you can collaborate with the private ones as well, but people can see your work. And if you apply for a job, for example, then you have proof that you can code. You can also add a README file. So this gives additional information about what the project that you're working on is about, if you want to. So if you click that one, it will add it automatically. If you don't tick it, nothing will be added there. You have the git ignore file that we already created. It gives you a template, which is super handy. And it's based on different languages. So if you use Python, for example, we can search for Python, and it will have all the file extensions that are not needed for you to keep track of changes, but are useful for when you load your files, for example. But then there are other languages, not only Python. So if we look for R, it is there. C++ is there. What else? Java, whatever you want, it's in there. So you don't have to choose one, but it's in there. I found it really useful. If you're sharing your repository, you may want to add a license. There are plenty of options for licenses, depending on what you are actually doing. One license may be more appropriate than the other. GitHub actually has a way to help you choose licenses. If you're going to learn more, it will give you more information here. And then this choose a license website will actually go through in detail what will be the best fit for your project. So it's really handy if you need that. So once you're happy with all the settings in there, you can just create your new repository, and it will open up a new page. So now it's telling you, because I didn't add a README file, only the git ignore, it's only showing me that I have a git ignore in there, which is absolutely fine. That's kind of what we need. So now what we need to do is actually connect this that is in GitHub to our own computer. So how do we do this? Under this green button here, code, you have this HTTPS address. So if you use the paths, this is what you need to use. If you decided to go for the SSH keys, you need to use this one instead. So just click on the one that is most appropriate, depending on what you've done. So if you use the path, we'll just copy this and it will be fine. So now we kind of need to go back into a repository that is in here. So we just need to make sure that we are in the right folder. So we are in desktop IMAS, which is where we were tracking all the changes. So now we're going to go git remote, because this is in the cloud. We're going to add, and we're going to add this branch that is called origin. We're going to call it that way. We can call it whatever we want. And then we're going to copy, I did copy that, I think, yes. So if we go paste that, so we're going to go git remote because it's on the cloud. We're going to add a new branch that we're going to call origin, and we're going to give that link to the repository. So we're going to go enter. It's going to think about it, and then it's going to be like, oh, nothing happened. Like, how do I know that this didn't work? We can go remote, git remote -d, and it's telling us, oh yeah, you have set the branch origin, which is the one that is online in GitHub, and you are fetching or pulling things from the cloud to you from this address, which is the one that we provided, and we're pushing or sending things over to that same address, which is exactly what we need to do. So now, once we've done all this, we can actually start changing, sending all the things that we have already done in here in our local machine. So if we go in here and we go refresh it, we see that we still have nothing of the things that we keep in our local machine, which is all this, as we have been working before. So what we need to do is we need to do a push. So we send what we have in our computer to the cloud, essentially. So we go, let me just double check, git push, and we push towards the origin, so the one that is on the cloud that we just named, from our main. Remember, that's the name of our branch that is local here. And you can just go enter. So it's going to think about it. Where does it go? Okay. So yes, I've forgotten this. So yes, it's giving me this error because if you see, our little repository was not empty. It actually had a file in there. So it's telling me it can't send any changes because they don't match. So that's fine. What we're going to do, I was going to show you this later. I was going to force this error, but yeah, we can do it now. So we're going to pull instead. So we're going to take everything that's on the cloud into our machine. It's going to think about it. Okay, and it's telling us that there is a problem with one of the files. So I go. Let me just go into my. So it's git pull. So I'm just going to make sure. So yeah, we just code it once more. Pull origin main. And then we can see what the problem is. Cat dots. Sorry? Why is it not showing up? What was that? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I think when I also like to hit pull without knocking in the beginning, just pull everything.
No,
Does it?
no. So you have to pull it first. So wait.
Because once it's connected to the SSH,
Yes.
you will just pull without.
Yeah, you had to pull it first, and then you do the push. But then I didn't do that, and that was the problem. Yeah. So. Yeah. Wait. So it's not. There's a way that you can force it to give you the. Okay, push helps. So I know this is the file that is causing the problem, but it's for some reason not showing me that problem. Let me just go into my notes. Maybe you need to do the ignore in your local folder first. So yes. So the idea is that when you do this, it actually tells you exactly what is not matching in the repository that is online and in yours. So that's what I'm trying to to do at the moment, but it's not working. Usually it will tell you this is exactly the file that is causing the problem. So main, not possible more. So we can just, I guess we can delete it. This is not ideal. No. So you should, why is it not like it? Full origin main, git push. Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of what it's telling me. It says to pull, and that's what I'm doing, but it's not telling me what. It says refuse the merge.
And how about like this pull from the state right in the center?
So the SSH is how you connect. I don't know what you mean to by everything.
Yeah, like this and just hit pull without the name.
Yeah, let me just delete this file. So we go git pull. It's still not doing it. I don't understand. I don't really know why it's not letting me do that. I think I broke it. I don't have. I am not exactly sure why it's not letting me do that. And I think we've run out of time as well. Yeah, so I think I might need to do that. So it's just, yeah, it's telling me to pull, so I don't know. It's the right way. So you can clone it when it's like on the. So you clone it when you have something already. Oh, what have I done? Should have worked. Like I don't get it. Anyway, we can just delete it. So you can delete this by going into settings and then delete this repository, and then it will ask you to confirm. You can just make sure you type whatever it's asking you to type. And then we can create a new one again, and we're going to make an empty one so it works. I'm going to do public, none, and create a repository. Now I'm going to copy that key again. So this is basically what we did. So you can just, if you have it already in your command line, so it says like remote, add it, then just push it. So that's kind of what we did before. So git remote. So we're going to do, actually I'm just going to go. So it's remote, add, we're going to go origin. We're going to make sure that we include that address that we just got from before. No, why is it letting me? I think I broke it. There we go, git. So if we go push, origin to main. There we go, now it's working. So now that it was empty and I push things, it let me push everything that I have in my local machine. So if I refresh this, it will now show up everything that is being tracked in my local machine. But I just don't understand why it wouldn't let me do when I forced the error. Well, I made a mistake, but I was going to show you this anyway, how to do that. But in any case, if you make changes here, for example, if you want to add a file, you want to create a new file, for example, I'm just going to go new file dot, oops, no, that's not what I want to do. So add file, create new file. So we're going to go new file.txt, for example. This is a new file. This is a new file again. So this is just to, so you can see how you can start pulling changes. So if you commit the new file, it will appear in your GitHub as a new file.txt. But then if we see our local machine doesn't have that new file. So the way that we can make sure that we have both the branch in the cloud and the branch in the computer the same, we just use the git pull. So we push to the cloud and we pull from the cloud. So it's the same thing. We pull from origin into our main, and then we'll see that it has added a new file to our local machine. And you can see that it's called a new file in there as well, new file.txt. So if we look at our Windows Explorer, we see that the new file is in there. And if we open it, we see that it has that line. So now they are both organized in the same way. So you can make changes and in your local machine, push them away. If you're collaborating with someone, especially that someone makes a change, you can pull it back to your machine. It's always good practice to pull before you push. So you make sure that your copy in your computer is the same as the copy in the cloud before you send any changes. Otherwise, it happens what just happened before, where the computer doesn't know what is going on and you can't make these changes. What else do we have? So I just wanted to make that, so we have 2 minutes. So usually when you have these problems where there's a difference in the files, you often can just go, if you push, for example, and they weren't in the same version, the one that was in the cloud and the one in your computer, you can pull things and it will tell you exactly what is not matching. And then you can just open it up in your text editor or whatever software that you use, and it will actually highlight these are the lines that are problematic, and then you can choose which ones to keep. So I don't know why it didn't let me do it before. But I'm just going to try here now before we leave in the next minute. So if I go to the text file, for example, I'm just going to add a new line in here. I'm just going, this is a second line. And I'm just going to go to second line here. And I'm going to save the changes. And I'm also going to make changes to my file here. This is a third line, for example. Make the changes. And if I try to push now, it will fail because both of my files are not exactly the same. So what I should have done is do the pull first. So I have everything tonight. Now it's telling me, yes, you have a file that is problematic, which is this new file.txt. So if I go and do an atom.newfile.txt, and open that up in my, is it open? Yes. It hasn't updated it yet. Let me spool again. I don't understand why it's not showing me. Usually the way this works is that you can just pull things, and then you just make sure to check what the problem is. Maybe I'm just skipping a step. What am I doing wrong? Let's see. Oh, I know what it is. So I'm going to add my file. I'm going to commit my file, adding line. I'm going to push to origin. Then it's going to fail, and then I'm going to pull it. Yes, that's what's, okay, so that was the problem. Okay, I skipped a step. This happens every now and then. So basically, I made the change in my local repository, but I didn't add it, so I wasn't tracking it, and that's why it didn't know what to do with it. So now that I tracked it, I added it first, I committed the changes, I did the pushing, it failed because it's not exactly the same. So then I did a pull, so it will take whatever is on the cloud, compare it to what I have in my local machine, and now if I open it in my text editor, now I see that, oh, the changes that I have locally includes this third line. The changes that are in the cloud are actually these changes in here. So it's really nice because it highlights it for me. This is unique to this particular, software. So if you have a different software, we can close it here and we can see it from new file in here. So we can see it's the same thing. We have this head and this other bunch of letters and numbers, which indicates the commit. So then what we need to do is like in between the head and the number of the commit, we need to make sure that we keep what we want and delete anything else. So I just realized, oh, actually, I want to keep this. So I'm just going to keep that. I'm just going to put that as a second line. And I'm just going to delete this stuff here and keep my third line. So this is actually what I want to keep. I save that, and I'm happy with this. So then what I need to do is do a git add the new file. I'm going to commit that. So I'm going to say I'm fixing discrepancies in new file .txt. And then I'm going to push to the origin. And now it works because now I fixed the problem. I fixed the discrepancies. So now if I go into my GitHub repository and refresh that, now it's giving me exactly what I have saved. So that was the problem before. I couldn't solve it because I didn't add and commit the change locally. I have to add and commit before I do the pushing. Sorry about that, if that was kind of obvious, now that I say it out loud. And then if you have any sort of discrepancies, you can pull it. You will compare these two versions, the one in the cloud, the one in your computer, and then it will tell you exactly where the changes are, the differences are, and then you can make whatever changes you think are appropriate. And then once you make the changes, again, you add them, you commit them, and then you push them, and then you're fine. So that's kind of like, it happens a lot. But as you can see, every now and then, I forget how to solve this. And it's always like, you make the changes, add, commit, and then just pull to make sure that you compare these two things. So it's almost like doing a git diff locally, but this is comparing the two versions that you have in the cloud and in your computer. And that's kind of it. Do we have any questions? Sorry, I've gone over already. No? No, no? Anyone online have any questions? No? Great. Thank you so much for joining today. And yes, if you have any ideas of what sort of workshops, oh, there we go. So Shane is saying, when you connected your repository from your computer, you did not use the path. Was that because it was a public repository? No, that's because I already have my GitHub connected to my computer. But if you do it the first time, it will ask you for your username and your password. And when it asks you for your password, instead of using your actual password, you use your path. And that's how you connect things. And then it will never ask you for your password again. The SSH keys are a little bit different. And there are instructions in here. This, I'm actually going to share this with you. Hopefully the messages will help, actually work this time. And it will give you instructions on how to set it up, so you can choose whatever you prefer. And yeah, that's kind of like it. There's other options to GitHub in there as well if you ever want to see them. Yes, other places where you can connect directly to Git. So for example, we saw that Atom has that capability of version control already in there. RStudio has it as well. Jupyter Notebooks has it, so it's really good. And what does it say? Oh, the recording will be shared. Yes, it will be shared at some point in the next week or so in our YouTube channel. And we'll send this email as well to everybody. And that's it. So we need to go because they're like kicking us out now. Thank you again for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you again in a future event. And just send us an email if you ever think of anything that you would like to learn.